Hi and welcome. My name is Tolan and I'm the co-founder of Productivity Me. In this video, we're going to look at the idea of tracking changes within your workbook, and we'll look at how you might use this both for your own benefit as well as perhaps for projects where you're sharing or collaborating with multiple people. So with that, let's get started. If you want to follow along, go ahead and download exercise file 13.05. You can find a link to download this file in the description section of this video. All right, so if you want to track your changes within Microsoft Excel, you can do so by going to the Review tab and then going to Track Changes. Track Changes, of course, is in the Changes group. So we'd go to Track Changes, and then you're going to have a series of different options. So let's go to Highlight Changes. Now, you can track changes while editing, and this was essentially going to give you a shared status. As we looked in the last video, this doesn't necessarily mean other people are using your workbook, but it just essentially is a functionality within Microsoft Excel that they want you to be aware of. Now, you can then select individual things like, well, when do you want us to track changes, or Microsoft Excel? Maybe you want to track changes since the last time that you saved it, or since the last time that you've reviewed it, or since a specific date. In this case, let's just say I want to track all of the changes. You can also decide that you want to track changes of specific people. So say that you are sharing a workbook. Maybe you don't care about the changes that you've made, but you want to track the changes of everyone but you. That you could do. I'm going to just leave it on the default. Then you can also say where. You could say, I just want to track changes in this specific range, and I don't care about the rest of the worksheet. That would definitely be possible. But I'm going to delete that. And then you can also say highlight the changes on the screen. So we'll just hit OK for now and see what happens. So it's going to kind of have the similar prompt to when we shared the workbook, and it's going to say it's going to save a new version. We'll hit OK, and now you will see in brackets the word shared. So it's 13.05 shared. And this is because we're tracking changes. So when we make a change, let's change this to 200,000. You'll notice that in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little black box. This is kind of similar to when we created comment. So another change we could make would be to go to the review section and insert a comment. And then there is a little red box. So changes here are going to be things like changing the color or changing the value. And kind of depending on your settings, it may not track the changes for just changing the formatting or adding a comment. But if you were to say change the value here, 200,000, this change 200,000, maybe delete this, then you could go to review. And once you go to review, you can go to track changes, and you can either go highlight changes or accept changes. So we'll go to highlight changes, and then we'll say okay. Again, we would have these little boxes tracked. Let's go to accept or reject changes. So we're going to hit OK, and we're going to have to save it. Once we've saved it, it's going to say, OK, we can choose these individual items. We'll hit OK. And then the first change was to change the value from 130.9 thousand to 200,000. So you can go along and you can either accept or reject these changes. I'm going to hit close. And instead what we're going to do is we're going to go to highlight changes and then highlight changes and list them in an entire new sheet. So we're going to hit OK. And then this will show you the 3 changes that we made, right? So the first change here was made on the 28th, which is today, is made by me. Essentially what do? We change the cell, quarterly sales, C3. So we could go and look, quarterly sales, C3 here. What do? We changed the value from $130.97 thousand to $200,000. Same would be true here. We went in D6. So what is D6? D6 is here. Change that to 200,000. So the way that we got there was we went to track changes, highlight changes, and then check this little box here. And it generated a new worksheet. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and accept or reject changes, you would do that pick your settings, hit OK, and then you could either accept it or reject it. If you reject a change, notice the value is now currently 200,000. Reject it, goes back to the default value. This value here, we'd reject it, go back to the default value. So those are the individual choices and things that you can do with track changes. So we got there by going to the review tab and then going to track changes and highlighting the changes. We specified when we'd want to track changes, who we'd want to track changes for, where we'd track changes, and then whether or not we want to highlight them. Hit OK. It created a shared workbook, or the status of shared. And then when we made changes, those changes were indicated by a little black box. We could go to track changes, highlight changes, and then list the changes on a new worksheet. We have to save our worksheet and then go to highlight changes on a new worksheet. And essentially we made one change. It was from 160.16 to 175. And then lastly, we can go and we can either accept or reject. Hit OK. We can accept or we maybe have to reset the date so that it's proper. And we could also reject those changes. So with that, you've now reached the end of our core course. If you have any comments, any questions, any ideas, go ahead and post them in the discussion section. As we continue throughout this course, or rather as we continue throughout building tutorials and courses like this, we want to find different ways to communicate the information more succinctly, more effectively, in a manner that it's more interesting to you. So any feedback that you might be able to provide us would be really, really appreciated. So you can subscribe to our channel, you can send us a message on YouTube, whatever you do, we would love to hear from you. So as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.